learning about them. Oh, thank you for whoever did that. I know you all are learning about them this week. So one thing I'd like to do is to ask you, like, what is it that you, like, what are global mass stories in your opinion? What have you heard about them? And so an unmute, if you're unmuted, like Sarah, she might have to talk already. Any idea what like global mass stories are?
For me, I think that global math stories are context. They're a reminder that mathematics is not just something we do in a certain hour at school, but they are the places mathematics appears in our real world, and a broader perspective on that than the things we see in our immediate space. It kind of gets us out of our own heads and corners of the universe.
That's great. Is anyone want to add anything to that? Because I'm sort of tempted to go ahead and turn the rest of this presentation over to Sarah, because that's a very good answer.
Thank you, but that's not the plan. I still have a presentation to finish for you for next week.
That's true. I appreciate that. So what can you do with global math stories? How can you use them in your classroom? So we saw an example. I'm going to just say this. We saw an example last night, yesterday. You can do a whole story and really set a context, just bring people in and teach them about what another part of the world is. But it can also be used to set context. I really like what you said there, Sarah, with that. It can set the context for a mathematical task. And frankly, all I want to do sometimes is just get my students in that space. And then we just do the typical math that we're going to do, but they're doing it in a different space, and that can be helpful. So how comfortable are you with global math stories still? How many, I think you all have the ability to do an icon, I think. If you do, give me a thumbs up if you are, raise your hand if they are new to you. Are global math stories new to any of you yet still? Okay, Heather, they're new to you. That's good. I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are at the end of this presentation. I know I saw you yesterday. So you've seen them, but don't know how to use them. How many are in that spot right now? Okay. You can use them with support. Any of you are in that spot? Good. I'm glad about that. That sounds good. I can't actually see the other two. I can use them in my classroom. How many of you can use them or teach others how to use them? Is that new to everyone? Maybe that's sort of where we are. My goal is for you all to be at that point, maybe within the next few months, because I really want this idea of global math stories to grow. I think it changes the way class can look for people. So global math stories really are a collection of one-page stories that set the context about what life is like in different part of the world. They've been submitted by people all over the world, anywhere from professors of mathematics in sort of the Oceania area to, we had a child, maybe a second grader, sent us a story one time just saying there are a lot of peacocks in my island and they chased me at the grocery store. We did a little research and we found out there was an island in Florida where peacocks have become sort of invasive and they're a real nuisance to people. Yeah. So that's a pretty interesting story to me. And frankly, there's a lot of ways to think about how that can impact a person living in that kind of space. And then the social justice questions. So we have two ways to get to global math stories. One is by going to our MathKind website. The other is just by going to global math stories. If you Google global math stories, we're usually the very first hit. So that's a quick way of getting to the site. So what do you find? We said this yesterday. You find learning activities after the one-page story. And I want to say what I like about global math stories are the one-page stories are about things you don't think about probably as an outsider about the space. So for instance, on our list of wants is a story about the bodegas in New York City, because that's where people who are locals, really, that's their community. you and I, we all know about the Statue of Liberty, and we know about the Eiffel Tower, not the Eiffel Tower, but the large buildings in New York City, but we don't necessarily know about where people find their community. And I think that's a really interesting story. So we have the stories, and then attached to them are learning activities. We have social justice questions, things that are a little bit challenging, and we'll weave those into today's talk. And then there are some presentations that are pre-made, like the one that you all saw yesterday that will be on, it might already be on the site. I'm not sure. So as you can just literally connect your lesson. If you're teaching multiplication, we'll talk about how you can just make that a part of any story. But other things that you could do is, as you're reading the stories, you can look at sort of, what do you notice and what do you wonder? What are the questions that come about from that? So that's one way of thinking about it. Around the world, people use mathematics to make estimations, and to optimize what's happening. So how can I make this thing more efficient? What's the best way to do something? Also, their estimates, right? How tall is that building? Or how much coffee do people drink in this part of the world? The ability to make these estimations is a really important skill for kids. What are some similarities and differences, and how might you classify them? And I think that opens the door to some really interesting, deeper questions about social justice. We're going to do an activity like that today. And then we talk about mathematics for social justice. And so that's looking at the bigger issue. You know, how are the peoples impacted, and how can they be empowered by understanding the mathematics? So if you have the access to the computer, I would like you all to take 5 minutes and just take a peek at some of the stories. And so here's a list of the stories. So if you literally click, I'm going to do this here for you. If you click global math stories, it literally takes you to it takes me to the site because I've been there about enough, but your first hit would be global math stories. And if you click on it, it takes you to this site. So take 5 minutes and take a look at some of the stories that are interesting to you. If you'd like, one of us could point you to one of our favorite stories. I know Hans, Jenny, and I are very familiar with these stories, so are Callie. But take a look at them. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to look at them. Hello, Diana. Can you hear me okay? There's about 3 more minutes, everyone. Okay, about a minute and a half. All right. This is close. I always have the most difficult time waiting the full 5 minutes. So can someone share one of the stories that they found? What was the story about? I might click on it if you can see my screen. Okay, the Texas Gardens. Can you unmute Shanna and tell us about that a little bit? Okay.
I started with Texas gardening because I grew up on a farm. So
yeah,
I'm always interested in how to incorporate gardening into our school. And we actually have a small greenhouse at our school that we are looking into getting up and going. So that's how that sparked an interest. But then when I finished that, I moved to Sri Lanka because from the country we go fishing. And
oh yeah,
that is, I didn't finish it, but that is quite interesting and looks very uncomfortable.
It does, doesn't it? For 3 or 4 hours. Yes, it's remarkable. So tell us, okay, so the Sri Lanka fishing story is they fish in the surf. It's an ancient sort of tradition, and they really make a figure 4, right, with the sticks, an upside down figure 4. So if there's a stick that they sit on, push it into the surf and just sit there and catch the day's fish. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yep, that's good. I'm glad. So you're seeing a flavor, and I like that what happens so often when we work around the world with teachers is they look at the story in their community first. They find it almost, it's like, let's validate that this makes sense, and then they start looking around the world, and it's been fascinating to watch. Who
Looking
else?
at the subjects you relate to.
Yes. Good. Tell me about the African penguins, Carrie.
I had picked the penguins because I like zoo animals. I like going to the zoo. In fact, my son, that was what he wanted to do for his birthday, was go to the zoo. So I clicked on it. I looked at it. I loved it. But when I clicked on where it says math, like resources on the right-hand side, I saw it said middle school. And I got to thinking, see, I'm a 4th grade math teacher, so I'm a lower. I mean, I would like to get involved in stuff like this, though, to see our kids from being from they're in low poverty. The only place they really go to is like the beach. Like that's all their families want to go vacation at, because that's all their families can really afford.
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to show them stories like this, but I also want to be able to do it on their level. I didn't know if you guys have anything where it's strictly like maybe lower, not middle school.
Yeah. So Carrie, I'm so glad you asked that question, because what we want to do is that by the end of this session, we want you to be able to use this story in your classroom. So literally by the end of this session, you will have an activity that you could use with your students if this is the story you guys want to use with your group. Yeah.
I gotcha. Oh, I didn't just read it. I mean, I read it a
Yeah.
little, but I jumped from like the Great Wall. I saw that. I was like, oh, that would be interesting because
Mhm.
we had just finished a unit with metric system, the
Yeah.
meters and kilometers. And that would be nice to show them because pretty much most of everybody else in the world uses the metric system and we don't.
Yeah, we just had that conversation before you came on. Yes,
Yep.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of these I would love to. And see, I used to do something not really like this, but they're called math talks. And you take 5 minutes to look at a picture and it
Mhm.
gets their little brains thinking before they start to do math. And
Yeah.
I thought I would like to jump back into that again. And I think this would be perfect for that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly. Well, that's another great way of looking at these. And so really by the end of the session, you should be able to use the penguin story for literally any subject you're teaching, any topic you're teaching. That's my hope. So anyone else have a story you want to share that you found interesting, or should we move on? And I'm a teacher, so I'm going to sit and stare at you guys for at least 10 seconds.
I like the zebra story.
Oh, good.
Although I situated in Kenya more than Tanzania because that's where I saw the run. But
so you saw them. Tell us a little bit about the story, Sarah.
So the story is about the migration of the zebra and the wildebeest in the Serengeti. And it's a seasonal follow the food and water routine. And they cross the border from Tanzania to Kenya. The Serengeti is, crosses that political boundary. So it's Masai Mara in Kenya and Serengeti in Tanzania, I think. But the story will tell. And the most dramatic part of it is that at one point they have to cross the river. And there are all sorts of things that will eat them in said river. So you want to do this quickly. And the hills of the river are quite rocky. And what happens is the animals all kind of back up at the edge until somebody decides it's time to go. And then you have hundreds or thousands of these animals crossing in a very short period of time. And you can see some of them struggle to get up the hill. And, it's nature in all its forms in that sense, but it's incredibly dramatic. And when we were there and got to see it on a MathKind trip, we spent a lot of time thinking about estimation. How many animals are crossing? And, if I take this snippet of the video that I grabbed, what can I see and how can I scale that to how long they were running and that kind of stuff. So that's the connection I make to that story.
Love that. And Carrie, there's another story about animals. And my wife and I Jenny, who you see there, probably love the story as well, because you see the author of this is our daughter, Charlotte, who is now pre-vet sort of. So so this is another animal loving story. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to move this down now and continue on a bit. Kim, I like the tradition or dang mess. Poutine is quite an interesting thing to eat. And frankly, we all can make it ourselves at home now. And you should think about that for your next Thanksgiving dinner. So hopefully this little pop thing comes up here. I'm waiting for the rest of the slide to happen. There we go. Okay, so, you can use actually almost any of these stories. What the stories for me, I think what Sarah said at the very beginning was really right on. The stories set the context. And so you can almost choose any task for it. Now, ideally, if you're doing zebras and you're doing a story, you're doing a math activity on estimation or patterns in geometry, it's right there. It's very clear, right? But you can also, it's about setting the students in a context. So I could do an addition activity, or I could do fractions using zebras. It's a little gory, maybe, what fractions survive, but you could actually go, what? In Kenya, a popular dish is blah, blah, blah. I don't know what Sarah, you know what a popular dish is in Kenya because you've been there. Can you think of one?
There were some fish dishes. I don't think anybody ate zebras, or at least they didn't tell us. But
well, let's hope not. Yes.
There was a whole fish that they took out of Lake Victoria and fried and prepared, and I'm drawing a blank on its name.
Yeah, so if you talk about the recipe of the fish, Well, we all know how to use fractions in recipes. We do it all the time. So again, the story is to set the students in a context to sort of create the space. So this is an activity I quite like. It's sort of like, which one of these doesn't belong and why? So I'm going to give you all about a minute, actually 30 seconds, because waiting a minute is too long for me, to take a look and decide which one doesn't belong and why. Okay. Whew. Made it. What do you think? Which give me an answer. Which one doesn't belong and why? And Heather and Diana, I have not heard from you two. If you can pop in and tell me what you think about this, that would be wonderful as well. Okay, Kim says the bagel is a square. So that's different than everything else. Why the cup, Heather?
So I was thinking more so because like you can't eat it, just like someone
Yeah.
in the chat, and you drink from it. But I think this is a good question because I can honestly see from any example, like anything could not belong depending on how you look at it.
Yes, yes. This is such a great activity. Jenny said the hamburger because it's only half. I like that. I had never thought of that perspective. That's a pretty cool one. The square, yes, the square doesn't belong. Heather, you're right. I think that's one of the hidden beauties of mathematics. I think if you are presenting a class, a math class where kids have to decide the answer themselves, and sometimes there are more than one answers, people are forced to listen to each other's perspectives. And this is such a cool activity for that very reason, because each one is probably right. Hans, that's a good answer. It's not for breakfast. So a bagel could be breakfast, certainly a donut. And then the cup it depends on what's in it, right? Yeah, it's great. So the question is, like, it's a great task, this task, because there's lots of ways you can approach it. There are lots of answers. We can make this much more complicated. We could look at the mathematical function that would let us model and graph this particular shape. Then it becomes a high school class, task. So it can be appropriate for lots of different things. And to me, there's a social justice question in this too, because it's easy to look at people or look at things that are the same and find ways that they're different. And that's a way of, setting yourself apart. So in this example, the cup could set itself apart because it's not something that's edible, where the bagel could say, well, I'm the only square here. And that's a good thing. So maybe you all see that. The question is, how does this become a global math story lesson? How can I take this task and connect it to a global math story? Let's look at the penguin story that Kim talked about. That Carrie talked about. That penguin story is coming up. Let me go back and do it. Find it. Here we go. Penguin Island. Okay. So how can I connect this task to this? Any ideas? This is a tough one.
Well, penguins, whenever you think about them, you don't think about them being in Africa. Like it says in the thing, it says you think about tigers, lions, elephants, but it kind of doesn't belong that you think. But in reality, penguins are just anywhere where water is.
That's this is why I love doing presentations with you all, because I had never thought about that. So when I'm hearing you say, Carrie, if I wanted to make this connection in my class, I would say, well, you know what? Here's a story about an animal that doesn't sort of belong in its space, but it surely works there. And that's such a cool, I just have to pause for a second. What a cool idea. I haven't thought about that one. I was much more simplistic. So I love it. Yeah. Well, does anyone dare follow Carrie up with an idea? Because like, not me. So for me, like if I were teaching this, I've done this a few times before, and I really, the teacher says, I really want to use this penguin story for this lesson. What I might do is, I'd find out where Penguin Island is. It's in Namibia. And so literally, I know that people around the world drink tea and coffee. So AMIM, here we go. And so I might just Google Namibia teas and see what a popular tea is. And there we go. We have these kinds of, so I have to do a little bit more research, of course, because I have to confirm it. But so what in the heck is Namibia Nights Africa tea? I don't know. And so I might say, well, here's the story about the penguins, and people in Namibia drink tea and so you see a coffee mug here. Here's a connection that we're making. So it doesn't all, like, this isn't the best example, of course. The best example would be just what Carrie just mentioned, but you can use this to set this, or what is a popular breakfast food in Namibia. So that would be something that you do. Or you could even say, penguins eat such and such for breakfast, and here's the breakfast food. Here are some things that are foods. So the idea is we want to just set the context of what life is like in a different part of the world. Does that make sense to you all? Can we try this with another story? Let's do it with, let's do it with this story because it's one that I wrote. Also, I want to plug the idea that your story from your childhood is in and of itself a global mass story. So this is a story about growing up in Ohio, and every fall, like coming away from the summer, our big event to come back was the All Ohio Balloon Rally. And it was like a big deal for a lot of us because we spent the summers sort of on our farms or in the woods on our own. And so, like the middle grade years, you usually grow 3 to 4 inches, and it was like your big coming out with all of your friends again. And so it was a big deal to go to the All Ohio Balloon Rally. So, they would have a day of balloons, and then there'd be sort of an air show as well. We played the arcade games and had a lot of breakfast and things like that, a lot of fun snacks. So can you see how I might connect the All Ohio Balloon Rally to this task? Any ideas?
I'm looking at the photo of the 4 balloons down towards the bottom.
Yeah, right.
And so while it's not the same pictures from your which one doesn't belong, but as I first start to look at this, I think that you could use this picture for which one doesn't belong.
I like that. Yes, you could do another example of this. You start with this one, and then you can go to the bagels one. It's great. Another illustration of why I think it's critical to keep enough open-endedness in this website that teachers can come up with their own ideas. That's a really good one. Yeah. I had a similar one. I was thinking we could take, screenshots of the balloons, and each would have 4 different balloons, or even just replace one of these items with a circular balloon. That would be something. If you did some research, there are a couple of pretty big donut companies that do a lot of work in Central Ohio, so you can connect to that. Donuts are very popular in that part of the world. Sarah, they are in where you are too, because you're in Ohio, right? It's sort of a donut. Is that right?
There are some, yeah.
So, or bagels, bagels are another thing. So anyway, that's a way we might make a connection. Let's move on. So I'm going to slide through this because there's not a huge group of people. So I think we could sort of put something together as a group doing lessons. So I'm going to go through here. What I want to do is we're going to work together to build a lesson by the end of the class period. And so in creating the lesson, we're not going to be in groups. So this was set up if we were in groups. So we will have a moment as a whole group to do this. But we want to look at the story. What story? Where's the place that we want to find the context? Where do we want to set our students for the day? And then we choose the mathematical concept that we want to teach. And so we'll work on that in a second. So how do you choose a mathematical concept? I know you all have done some lesson planning, but this is something that I think is a really interesting way to think about what it means to teach, what it means to teach a lesson. So it's like the no pyramid. And my advisor, Susan Friel, sort of told this to me. So the first thing you do when you're thinking about teaching a lesson is you say, what do I want my students to know? Makes sense, right? What do I want them to know? The second thing is, how will my kids know what I want them to know? So the first one is, what am I teaching? The second one is, what task am I doing? And then the third one is, how will I know, my kids know what I want them to know? Which I have to say, it took me about a year to get my head around saying that. But so that's assessment, right? The first one is, what's your objective? The second one is, what's the task they're going to do? And the third one is, how are you going to assessment? And there are lots of different ways you can do lesson plans. Of course, there's the 3-part lesson plan, and there's the lesson plan as a story, and you have a plot. But no matter what, you have to think, what do I want my kids to know? How will they know the thing I want them to know? How will I know they know what I want them to know? And that is the no pyramid that Susan Friel told me sort of in an offhanded conversation going to class one day. So we want to think about that in two contexts, right? What's the mathematical thing I want them to know? And then what is about the part of the world that I want them to know about? So we're going to work in our groups as a group to do this. So Carrie, you're a late elementary teacher. That's right. What other grade levels are you all working? Shanna, where are you? What grade level are you working with?
I actually work with Carrie. We're 4th and 5th grade at the school we're at.
Good. So this is a perfect, this is good. Where are you guys? What school are you?
We're at Wadesboro Elementary School. Callie's mother actually referred us.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. Yes. Heather, what grade level do you teach?
I actually teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math.
Okay. Middle grades math. Good. That's what I taught for years and years. Loved it. Every day is a sales pitch. I have to convince my kids that I'm there for them again today. So I don't know if you felt that way. How about you, Diana?
I teach in 6th and 7th grades.
Great. Okay. So and so Sarah, you I know you teach you're worth coaching all the grade levels. Hans, do you think we could put Heather and Diana and Sarah in a group together? And well, since Callie is connected to Carrie and Shanna, we could put them in a group together, and Kim as well, since all the North Carolinians.
Sure. So give me 1 second and I'll ask again,
Good.
Who do you think should be in one group? Because
okay, that's good. So we'll set 2 groups. And what I want you all to do in your groups is to choose a story and a mathematical concept, and then just try to connect the concept to the story. You don't have to go, what's the math in this story? Choose something you're interested in teaching. And I know Callie can help you all. Callie, you feel comfortable doing that in your group? And Sarah, if you can help as well, but I'll be there as well in that group. Okay, I'll pop in now for both.
Could you repeat the names of one of the groups?
Yeah, so Carrie, Shanna, Kim, and Callie.
Carrie, Shanna. Okay. Callie, Shanna, and who else?
Kim and
Kim.
Carrie.
Okay.
And Carrie.
Okay.
Okay.
And the other one will be all of the rest of us.
Heather, Diana, Sarah, and then Jenny, and me.
Jenny.
I'll pop in for both. And Jenny may or may not talk, which is fine.
Okay, I'm sending them all right now.
Okay, good. There, I'm muted. Okay, great. I hope you all were able to create something. So let's see, we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to spend about 3 minutes each, just sort of saying, here's the story we chose and how you might want to use it in your class. So from the other group, that was Kim's and Carrie's and and Shanna's and Callie. Tell me what you all chose and how you might use it in your class.
Okay, so we did look at the penguin story to see how I could put it in the classroom and come up with a lot of good stuff, because I was telling them I was going to go over reviewing fractions. Of course, that's always one of the biggest ones in 4th and 5th grade. Like, I could even share this with my 5th grade colleague and show him, and maybe he would even be interested in doing something like this. But we took the penguin story and we were trying to see how we could figure out what kind of fractions or what kind of standards with fractions we could put with it. And it turns out there's quite a bit. Like penguins eat 14% of their body weight. We could talk about 14 over 100, the tenths and hundredths, and even tie that in with decimals. Talking about how once they molt, they don't eat for like 3 weeks. Well, that's 3 out of 4 weeks. That's 3 out of 4 for the month. So that's a fraction. But yeah, it was really interesting. And now I'm looking at a live cam of the San Diego Zoo with their penguins. And I thought that is so
how powerful. And you guys can write a global math story about the San Diego Zoo. That's one of the things that we're gonna. Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's what Callie was mentioning. We could have the kids make up their own math stories or their own word problems and have others in the class, try to solve that problem. And that could be a definite thing. That would be neat.
Yeah, so you're seeing what I'm hearing from you too, is I hope you're seeing this. One reason we don't want to have, we don't want to say you must use this story to use fractions is because in reality, you could do almost any topic in any story. It just, the limits are your creativity. And finally, it'd be really great if you do use this for you to share what you use with us, because we'd love to put it on the site for others to see it.
All right.
That's good. All right, Diana or Heather, can one of you share? We chose the penguin story as well. So can you tell us what you were thinking? What came up in our group?
Okay, in our group, we chose the story of the penguins as well, but we were seeing that in a different way. We thought about proportions and percentages, but I was listening to Kari, and I think that we can do like a relationship between the fractions and then the percentages, and then go to proportions. So what? Yeah, so I think that's amazing because we can build different topics and connect everything at the same time.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I like that. And you could do that with every single subject, every single story. You could do that same activity with every single story. I love that you all chose this fractions and proportions. We also talked about using capture, recapture as a way of estimating the population of penguins on the island. So that was good.
And then
Sarah.
I'll speak for Heather for a minute, because she had a comment that I thought was
Yes.
really nice about, you'd been talking about these, Chad. We've been talking about these as the beginnings of lessons, but it could also be something that you use at the end.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to fit as an opening or a warm-up.
That's a great point. I like that a lot. Yeah, another example of just the fantastic ideas I hear from people when they talk about it, and always new things to me. Any other thoughts or questions about global math stories and how you might use them in your classroom? Okay, great. That's good. Please do share these with your classes. Kara just made my heart feel warm when you said you might share this with your 5th grade teacher, because I love that. I truly do. We want to see this become a movement. The world's an amazing, amazing place. It's just been a joy to do this. And frankly, we all have amazing bits of our history here as well. And so I would love for you all, if you had a chance to write a story about your hometown, or frankly, if there's something that's amazing in the world that you've seen, or if you were interested in a list of ideas that we have a lot of stories that we still want to write. There are pink lakes around the world. There, if you fly over Greenland, there's these beautiful turquoise, like light blue, that aren't typical colored lakes that are there for a reason. There's just really pretty phenomenal list of things, and they're quite a fun thing to do. I enjoy writing them a lot. So that, and your hometown where you live is unique. And like, think about if someone came to visit you, what would you want to show them? Well, that's what we want to see on the website, because we want people to sort of visit you virtually and find the unique thing about your space of the world, something that makes it special. And so I would encourage you to write a story. And I'm gonna, like, if Diana wrote a story, not to put you on the spot, Diana, but her name would, she'd be the author forever. People might edit it, but if she chose, she would be the author of that story. And you see on our website, like Charlotte's story about zebras, even though it's been updated a bit and Jenny did some cleaning up of the story, it's Charlotte's story. And we would do that with everyone. So also, it doesn't have to be perfect, because we have a good writer on our team who would help clean that up if you wanted. So please do contribute. All right. So tell me any comments or questions for the last couple of minutes that you might have. Next steps you'd like to see. Okay. So truly nothing, eh? That's good.
Well,
Yes,
I
Karen.
would actually like to comment thanking Callie's mom. I'm going to thank her tomorrow for sure. Like, thank you, Callie, for hooking us up here, because I think I can't remember if it is a teaching standard or not, but there's something about making global connections. And I always look at that standard and I always frown at myself, because I'm like, I don't know how. And you guys have made it very possible. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's exactly how this site came about. Yes. I love it. Can you all tell me too, like what I think that we're trying to figure out how we can make the site more usable for teachers and something that you'll want to share with others. Do you have any ideas or suggestions? What kinds of things? Because in some ways, I think it's important just to have something that's easy for you to read, but you may need more. Was it helpful seeing an example of how to use that? Was that like what we did today? Was that helpful?
Extremely.
I think that today everything was more, I think, more clear for me about the idea of telling these stories in class and how incorporate math into the use. I think that connection of everything, and I have learned a lot about other places too. So I think that my students will be happy to learn more about other places.
Got it. Yes. Yes. And Heather, were you saying it was helpful? It's helpful for you as well?
Yeah, this was really helpful. And like, I'm coming in not knowing like anything about it and wanting to learn more. So I'm just feeling like it doesn't seem like an easy thing to do, but I feel like I definitely will need to educate myself more on different places and be able to make those connections across the world with math.
Yes. And the site is really meant to make those learning about the other places in the world a little easier. And my hope is in today's session, you guys learned that the connection could be really solid and firm, but it can also just sort of be a loose connection because we're really trying to set the context, as Sarah said at the very beginning.
And I know for me too, that like having conversations with other people about what math we can find and how we can connect it to curriculum is really helpful. Because when I'm thinking by myself, I get stuck. But then someone says something and that inspires me, and I'm like, oh, okay, then this actually could connect to that. So the collaboration aspect, I think, is really important too. And one thing we want to try to do in the weeks following this is have a featured story every week and share it in a discussion, and we'll send it out to all of you as well so that people can read through it, think about their ideas, and put them in the discussion. So even though we won't be all coming together in these meetings, if that's something that you're interested in, we would love for you to bring your ideas and read what other people are sharing as well to try to facilitate some of that collaboration around how can I use a different story.
That's great. Yep. That feedback will be fantastic. Yeah. And as Carrie said, share this with your colleagues because being able to talk with them about it is very helpful as well. So thank you all so much for attending. And yeah, I'll stop sharing. I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. We have a really good friend of mine and an interesting talk coming up. So thank you all very much.
And last reminder, so if you are working to earn your digital badge for participating in this too, on chapter 12 of the course, there's a place for you to share your ideas. And it's just, you can write down somewhere your ideas that you talked about from tonight and add those there. That's sufficient. You don't have to create something complicated, but it's just that showing your evidence of being a part of this. So don't lose what you forgot about, and you can submit it as, or don't forget what you have worked on, and you can submit it to earn your digital badge for this learning series too.
Great. Excellent. Thank you all.